Today we have a presentation about the Appalachian Trail hurricane story and a little bit of background about that. Then I'll do introductions. Is that the Hurricane Helene hit the Southern Appalachians in late 2024, and there was a push to get the AT open for through hikers going northbound. There's a season where there's a big push of all the hikers coming through the area. And two wilderness areas, Big Laurel Branch and Pond Mountain, were hit pretty hard by like wind damage from the hurricane. And the as you guys probably know, chainsaws are a prohibited use inside wilderness, but because it was a natural disaster, the Forest Service was pushing to do that, saying crosscuts couldn't get done, and we put together a crosscut crew and got the work done. So this is kind of going over that story today. So first, going to do introductions, and then on the screen is going to play through just kind of a slideshow of the work. So you'll hear about what the work was on the ground, but then visually you can kind of get a feel about the um, piles up of trees at a time. So my name is Kristy Ealdwine. I'm a C crosscut sawyer and the Kentucky Volunteer Coordinator in the Danny Boone National Forest. And all of us presenting today are employees of SAW, the nonprofit partner organization that works with the Forest Service. Kaitlin, will you introduce yourself?
Sure thing. My name is Kaitlin Varona. I'm the executive director here at SAW. I have a pretty healthy background in conservation and programmatic work in wilderness, and here to kick off some of the story and then hand it to the awesome folks who made the story come to life.
All right, Scotty.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Scotty Bowman. Currently the Tennessee program manager based in Johnson City, Tennessee. I am a C evaluator in crosscut and have been one of the lead instructors for some of our regional crosscut courses for the last 5 years. Yeah, I'll pass it to Kacy.
All right. Hi. I'm Kacy. I am the Pisgah Trail Specialist over here in Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina. I had the privilege of being on every hitch to clear all of these trees, and I started out as an A sawyer, but then quickly became a B sawyer just due to the complexity and amount that we had to deal with.
Yeah, definitely. All right, thanks, y'all. Yeah, first, for question for Kaitlin. So, could you describe going into that meeting in spring 2025, with the Forest Service about chainsaws?
Sure. So, as you have no doubt heard, the storm had a major impact here in the Southeast. Immediately after the storm, partners were told to stand down, and the agency and a lot of us individually had to focus on kind of life and safety, taking care of our own family and friends and neighbors. And so there was a huge pause in our work. And so it really wasn't until, you know, mid-February where we kind of re-entered the conversation, hey, we're maybe able to start getting back into the field. And immediately upon getting into some of the conversations with, staff with the agency, who'd been out there just working their butts off to open up trails and to open up spaces, we started hearing a lot of talk about we're going to need chainsaws exemptions in wilderness. There is no way, I heard multiple people say it is impossible for us to clear, particularly in this conversation, remote sections of the Appalachian Trail in time for the bubble. It is impossible to do with crosscut saws. There's no way it can be done safely. And we're going to need chainsaw exemptions, for a year or more to be able to get all of these trees down. And there were so many trees down. I mean, just thousands and thousands. And some places saw, I heard a quote once from a manager that one wilderness saw like 90% canopy down. And so we're talking huge. And so it made sense. Some folks were reacting that way, particularly some folks who maybe didn't have as much training or experience using crosscut saws as saws. And so once we caught wind of this kind of growing pressure and desire to use chainsaws in the aftermath of Helene, I immediately was jumping up and down, raising my hand, and kind of like, can we have a shot at getting out there? I mean, I know it's mid-February, I know there's snow on the ground, but we have the best sawyers, some of which are here on this call in the Southeast or maybe the nation, who are able to get out in the backcountry and in the wilderness to use the traditional tools and crosscut saws to get these giant trees off of the trail. I mean, this is what we do. This is what we were planning for year after year. This is what we're training people to get out there and do. And I feel like we can do it. And so within, 1 week, 1 week's notice after hearing, this momentum starting about chainsaws, and that tends to be a knee-jerk reaction after major storms. Within 1 week, I was able to call many of our staff and say, hey, drop everything. We need, there's a huge need for us to get out into some of these remote places, in this case in Tennessee, to help clear some of these trails. And we were able to get, all the sea sawyers that we have on staff, maybe a sea sawyer or two that had come through the SAWS program, together right away, and put them on the ground, even in the snow, to get out there and start addressing some of these trees. And so that was kind of an initial to kick off the conversation.
Thanks, Kaitlin. And Kacy, you were out there every hitch, so like how long did it take? Like what did you guys accomplish out there?
Yeah, so we were out there for about 6 weeks. We did 4-day hitches for the most part. And 6 weeks that spanned from, like Kate was saying, end of February to about the beginning of April. So kind of right at that end mark that, we were given, we got to it, and that was the most exciting part. We cut over 600 trees. The number is still happily argued, but we all know it was at least over 600. And in that was 20.6 miles of wilderness trails alone. And that doesn't include, the sporadic one or two we had to cut on the approach trail to get there, or in the parking lot, or whatever. And we are also super proud to admit that we had 0 injuries. Couple of close calls, but we won't talk about those. 0 injuries for sure, though. And we spanned through 3 huge snowstorms. Talking, we went to bed at like 50 degrees and woke up to like 20 and 4 inches of snow. So it was all a surprise to all of us, as we were generally out in the field when that happened. So yeah, so it was the most exciting 6 weeks I think I've ever experienced, for sure.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome. Thanks, Kacy. Scotty, my next question is for you. So, there were a ton of trees down, but was it too technical or unsafe to use crosscuts to do the cutting operation?
Um, no, it wasn't unsafe. I think that we proved that, by going out there and having minimal, cuts and scrapes, injuries. That's about it, from, cutting, going through brush and things of that nature. Overall, I mean, yeah, there was some high complexity trees. We had a lot of movement. Kacy was involved with a number of trees that, had root ball stand up. Some swung up fast, some swung up slow. We had some large diameter trees. I believe the largest one was like 42, 44-inch diameter red oak. But it's when we're tackling these complex trees, these jack straws, trees that are spring poles that are 8 inches in diameter and things of that nature. It's taking it apart and doing it safely. utilizing the skills, utilizing the experience. We had a lot of very experienced sawyers, and then we had some that had some experience that gained a whole lot of experience and got to see some highly technical stuff. And so, no, I don't think that it was unsafe to go out there with crosscuts. I feel like it was probably safer because we had minimal equipment that we carried out. Maintenance wise, we didn't have to worry about things breaking, except for handles on axes but we had the stuff to, sharpen the edges, hone the edges if we needed to. So, just getting out there and getting it done and just having the tools and being able to be out there. I think that was the plus. Staying out there for those 4 days, even though it was in the rain, it was in the snow, it was in the heat. I think one of the hitches I remember in particular, it was the weather. The weather was our biggest caveat in what made it complicated sometimes. And it's like we hiked in and it was 60 degrees. And on the hike out, we hiked out in 1.5 inches of snow. And that's in 4 days. So we got to see those extremes. We got to see all of that. Just yeah, the fun part and the hard part. The hard part was the weather and dealing with that and dealing with being tired, doing 10, 12-hour days. But at least we could go back to our tents. We have a hot meal and do tool maintenance and then go to bed and get up and do it the next day.
Yeah, exactly. I would also argue that in a lot of ways, bucking with a crosscut can be safer than a chainsaw because of you have the team element of like two people or more looking and analyzing the tree, two people um on the log that they're bucking, they're listening, they're watching they're solving the puzzle together. With a chainsaw, you sometimes have tunnel vision. You're doing it alone. You're cutting it faster, so you might not notice the kerf opening up a different direction than you thought as quickly and stuff like that. So that's what I think is that sometimes or most of the time a crosscut is actually going to be a safer tool because of that.
Yeah. Sharp minds, sharp saws, sharp team effort.
Can I add on, Kristy?
Yeah.
I think you both nailed it well, but as someone who, one of my first experiences at working in conservation was on a backcountry chainsaw crew, not in wilderness. And so I love a good sharp chainsaw. But in this case, we were using the right tool for the job. And I just think Scotty did a good job of highlighting some of the challenges that we saw out there was actually the weather. And another big challenge was actually just getting out to some of those places, which is always the challenge of wilderness, to get to a remote area and then be able to stay out there multiple days so that you could maximize the time that you spent on the trail. And neither of those things are solved by carrying a chainsaw out there. You still have to hike all the way out there if you would have gotten an exemption. You still have to deal with the snow and the freezing water if you're going to open up this trail before the bubble comes through. And so I think sometimes we lose sight of some of the real or more immediate hurdles to doing trail work way in the backcountry or the wilderness is not always the barrier. Isn't always the saw. It really is some of these other like time and weather factors that I think is important to remember.
Yeah, and in some of those cold mornings, the crosscut saw always started, which it would not be a guarantee with a chainsaw. So
did not have to haul huge things of gas or bar oil out there, right? So
yeah, sounds heavy. Jeez. Um, uh, Kacy was crosscutting too slow to accomplish all the work that was out there.
It felt slow on some trees for sure, but that is just the nature of the game, and some days went by faster than others. But the thing that I like to brag about the most is that I had a wonderful saw partner, and just through the way that we were able to work very well together, we cut a 21-inch hickory that's both sides had the log out of the trail in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Now, I'm sure most of us know that hickory is some pretty hard wood, so we timed ourselves, and once we saw that 2 minutes and 30 seconds, we were like, wow, very comparable to a chainsaw as well. And again, back to just highlighting the fact that that log in particular was another like 3.5 miles from our tent site, which was already 5 miles from the road. So to carry a chainsaw in that big, that long, just to cut a tree that big would have it would have taken longer to cut the tree than it did us with a crosscut for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Uh, One thing I want to give background real quick as we talk about crosscut sawyers, we just because of terminology, like kind of the same as acronyms. So I just want to explain what an A, B, and C sawyer were real quick because it'll come up again as we talk. So to run a crosscut on the national forest, you need to be with a B or C sawyer who is trained and gone through the developing thinking sawyer class. So in A sawyer has gone through the class, but still needs to be around a B or C to like get some more experience and stuff like that. And a B uh can be with other people who are new to crosscut or learning crosscut. And a CSAR is someone that can like teach A's and B's and certify them and give them the training. And then a C evaluator can create more C's and and C evaluators and stuff like that. So that's the B, and C of that. Just so you guys aren't getting lost in the Forest Service jargon. Did you guys have any experiences with running into hikers on the trail while you're out there?
So we started, like I said, in about end of February. So we saw the very early beginning of that bubble. And as we got closer to April, the bubble of hikers definitely ramped up. Um, and there was not one person that didn't shake our hand or give us a thanks. So many people took our picture. I'm sure we were in tons of scrapbooks everywhere. Um, and one of our favorite memories is it was a long day. It was also super hot because the canopy was gone. So when that early spring summer sun hit, it was scalding hot. And it was one of those hot days, and there was a hiker. He was a retired man, so he was out there pretty early, and he made it his goal to spend as much money as he could in the small Helene hit communities. And when he came up on us, he got to hear our story of why we were there, and that was another great part of it was to be able to advocate so hard to all of these basically random strangers of the use of crosscuts. So this random man, after he heard our story, he ended up giving us $100 for lunch. So we left that hitch very happy. We got to go to like the small local little burger joint and tip the workers an extraordinary amount. So that was always one of my favorite hiker interactions for sure.
Awesome. Scotty, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, yeah. It was as Kacy was saying, it's like we ran into these folks and they were going north, and when we were in Big Laurel Branch Wilderness, we were working south. So we started north and started working south. And so we ran into those people as we started, we lovingly refer to it as climbed through the jungle gym to get to where we were at. And they were excited to see us and they were happy. And it's like, and then we could just look at them and go, hey, from here on to the next road crossing, it's clear. You don't have to climb over anything else. And they would come through, they looked haggard, but then their eyes would light up. They're like, oh, someone's out here doing this work, and a couple of times we did hear from folks. It's like, man, you guys are doing great work. You're doing the Lord's work. You're making sure that we're getting the trail clear and open. And that was the goal. I think, we're lucky we get paid to do this when we're out there, but also I think we do it because we love it. I can't think of any place else I would rather be than not out in the field with a crosscut, just going to town on cutting some trees.
Yeah, definitely. Kaitlin, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just so happy. I was just thinking about I don't know if we have mentioned how long it took us to do this impossible task that cannot be done with a traditional tool, but it took only 6 weeks, a little less than that, to get through this impossible can't be done task. And I think that just shows the competency and skill level that we have of the folks on this team, but also that love for the work and for the wilderness and for our public lands and serving the community out that way, as you know, Scotty was just kind of demonstrating, is something that we really hold close to our hearts here at SAWS. Is we just are so privileged to work for a nonprofit that's really mission focused, mission driven, and serving the community. And so you can do these impossible tasks even through the snow and the ice and the brambles and just the weather out there to get such great results. And I'm just really proud of the team, and it's just been a joy to relive every now and then when we talk about it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, okay, so people out there might be, living in different parts of the country and they could potentially see a situation like this happen where they are, whether it's a natural disaster or something else. The Forest Service might be like, we need chainsaws in wilderness. What can we do? Like, how can a place be ready for something like this to be able to be like, no, we can do this with traditional tools and like hit the ground and get it done.
Yeah, I think it's investment. It's an investment in time. It's an investment in training, but also building partnerships. The photos that the slideshow towards the end there, you got to see there was an actual Forest Service staff came out on one of the last few hitches um, to help out, like run crosscuts, and they were happy to do it and excited and loved it. And I think we had 3 or 4 folks that come out at that point. So it's building trust, it's building partnership, it's building out a SAW program, traditional tools program that is investing in the partners, investing in clubs, investing in people who want to learn this skill, and making sure that we're providing that training and that skill set. And I think that in our region, um, we were we were fortunate that we had that foundation there. We've been involved with running regional crosscut courses for several years and building out that program and building out that partnership to where it's like we've got Forest Service staff that are now at the C level with crosscut and partners and different clubs and organizations that have gotten to that C level. And I think it's just establishing those connections and building that trust. And I think that it it's on the Forest Service side or on the agency side, it's on the partner side, it's on the cooperator side, where we all meet and come together and talk and discuss and understand, we have a valuable skill set that we can go out there and do this work just as safely as you feel you can with a chainsaw. Um, I think it's important that to have the opportunity to go and go and get more experience doing that. That's the one thing I could say is like with working with the organization all these years. I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of hours just cutting and cutting high complexity. Helene showed me a whole new level of high complexity. And it builds confidence and it builds that skill set. And it's like, yeah, okay, we can deal with this. Over the years, I've seen tornado, I've seen ice storm, I've seen, flooding damage and things like that where we've worked. I mean, it's like Helene was the one that was like probably 10 times worse than I've ever seen it before. So, understanding that partnership is crucial, and that trusting that you have people that are partners with you that can do this work. It's foundational.
Thanks, Scotty. Kaitlin, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, two things come to mind. I think Scotty said it well. I think having someone who is experienced in crosscut saw use or traditional tool use take a look at the project site is really important. I think when we were, in this particular case, when we were catching wind of all the desired chainsaw exemption use was really being pushed by folks who weren't certified in a crosscut saw. So when they come up on scene, maybe they're very talented at, rec management or they're very talented at crosscut or at chainsaw use. When they come up on this huge problem and they see it, they're like, oh God, I'm going to need my chainsaw because that is how we're going to get through this problem here. It became very important to have someone who just was very had a strong background in wilderness management, wilderness stewardship to put eyes on it. So I put a Scotty out there, and Scotty takes a look and is like, oh, we got this. This is not going to be a problem. And so those are two very different reactions to the exact same situation out on the ground, right? And that happened a number of times in a number of different locations. And so the way that you get, more wilderness managers or folks who have a background in wilderness is to have different kinds of trainings or opportunities where folks can learn and plug in to wilderness stewardship traditional tool use. And so for me, I think the Wilderness Skills Institute and even this National Wilderness Skills Institute are so critically important for the continued strong use and stewardship of our wildest public lands. And so the National Wilderness Skills Institute here is such a great platform to connect across the country to land managers and practitioners and even academics. And then those kind of more wilderness skills institutes are really are able to train folks who are then the boots on the ground doing the work. And so what's so special about our Wilderness Skills Institute, and probably many of them, is that it's agency folks, partners, and volunteer groups coming together where we're all learning how can we better steward and take care of our wildest public lands. And so folks are then skilled at going out and responding to a huge natural disaster or other, tricky decisions that come up. And so I just think that's critically important to be able to continue to address things in the future.
Got him.
Yeah, I really would like to. I would piggyback off of that. I think that yeah, these trainings, these wilderness skills institutes, in all forms that they're presented, are crucial into building these skill sets, and building those connections. But the one thing I wanted to highlight was based on folks that have gone through several trainings over the years that I've led. When at the beginning, before we were able to put paid crews out there, I ran 3, 4 volunteer events and put the call out. And I had people who I had, have been through several of my courses. A group of guys, they drove 3.5 hours one way to meet us and brought their crosscuts and went out there and were like happy to cut. And they came back out again another time. And so they did like, a 7-hour round trip drive to go work 7, 8 hours cutting trees, and they were happy to do it. And they had that skill set, and they came through the SAW program, and it was I think that highlights that building the skill set through WSI and WSI through regional crosscut trainings and giving people the opportunity to utilize these tools when needed because they want to.
Yeah, thanks, Scotty. And uh those in the audience start thinking about if you guys have questions for any of the presenters here, but for the presenters, is there anything else that you guys would like to add that we missed about talking about what this experience was like?
I guess I would circle back that even though there was a lot of momentum to be able to use chainsaws, like as we were moving and grooving and able to report weekly, like we've just got another 60 trees, or we just, they've been able to knock out the first 10 miles. Folks were really receptive and really cheering us on, and whether it was the partners or the public or the agency, like we had a lot of support as well. So just throughout the entire process, when we asked for a shot at clearing some of the trails, and we're given that shot, we also had a lot of great partnership, really great support. I truly wish, here in the Southeast where we typically work the most with our folks in the field, like we just don't have any, I don't think there's a single wilderness manager right in the East that I'm aware of for the agency, and just thinking like how critically important that position could be and should be for land management purposes. And so we might face different things than other regions do who maybe would have like a wilderness manager take a look at a project, but we just don't particularly have that out here. But regardless, we did see so much support and partnership along the way and continue to do so. So just really grateful for the opportunity to ask for a chance and get that chance. Um, you know, we could have been told no, we don't have time, and so that kind of goes back to what Scotty was saying about just building strong relationships and having trust and just being able to take that shot. Felt really great. So I'm grateful for that.
Thanks,
And then we hit
Kaitlin.
a home run. We hit a slam. Oh my gosh, I'm mixing up the sports, but we hit a home run and it was great. Great grand slam, slam dunk, both of them.
Um, Paul has a comment in the chat. So, what about, uh, maintaining, maintaining and acquiring good crosscut saws, getting the saws sharp and stuff like that? How is that important to maintaining a good crosscut program?
It's crucial. You know, when you're cutting as many trees as we did, I know of two saws that got burned up. Like they're set, you know, every time you run a saw, a little micro millimeters, just metal comes off, and so they get dull over time. And sometimes if they get pinched, then it could knock the set out. And so it's really important to have skilled uh, sharpeners. We have some out there. We've got Nick Anderson, who was on the crew with us. He does a really good job. Paul Dickens sharpens saws. Dan DeWicki was doing it. I believe he's gotten out of it. And so these are different people that we've sent out. But also it's important through WSI, like this year, we did a crosscut sharpening course, and we brought three really strong instructors in. Oh, Josh Burt with ACE is another one. And we had 15 people, and we're, going through that whole process of learning how to sharpen a saw and tune one up and get one ready to go out into the field. And it's the same with like learning to use them, and getting really good at the technical aspects of that, but also learning how to maintain them. And I think that building out that program, and adding more and more bodies or more and more folks to the ability to do that is crucial. A good sharp saw is probably the most important thing besides below safety out there in the field, and having those. Yeah.
Kacy, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I think it's also a bragging point that we may have burned up two saws, but we didn't permanently break anything, nor did we lose anything over the 6 weeks. And if you were to see the jungle gym of trees that you could have truly lost your head if you didn't keep it on a big enough swivel. So it was a miracle that we didn't lose even a pin to a handle or anything like that.
Wow, that is super cool.
Yeah, I don't even think we broke an axe.
Oof.
Broke a handle.
Wow.
I'm fairly certain.
Wow, and that can happen like 100 feet from the parking lot too.
Yep.
Pretty easily. Um, Paul has another question in the chat, which is what are specific issues and dangers with storm damaged trees?
Movement, movement, a lot of stored energy. So you've got a lot of hardwoods came down. So it was hickory and oak took a hit. And so they have, there's just a lot of storage energy. You could see cracking and popping. If if you look at the slideshow that went through, there was one where we were cutting into a tree and it was basically barber chairing as we were cutting it. It was starting to fracture and split. And so because it was under so much energy and it was just bent in such a way that that can happen. And so being able to mitigate that and understand the dynamics of how to deal with that. The other thing is leaners, a lot of leaners out there. Some, we were able to manage and take care of, and some we waited until Mother Nature did what it needed to do. And it's just really the beauty of crosscut saw work and with using a really sharp saw is that you get to listen, you get to observe, you watch the curve, you listen to what the tree's doing. If you put a saw into a tree and you get barely into it to where the teeth are just past the edge of the teeth, and you start hearing noise, that's telling you something's happening. There's some energy going on there. And you don't hear that when you're running a chainsaw or using anything motorized, but with a crosscut, you're up close and you're listening and you're using all of your senses. And so, yeah, and being able to understand and know what the dynamic is going to happen. What is the dynamics? Where's this going to go? What's going to happen? Hopefully in your plan as you go through, you've made that decision, but sometimes it can change. You think it's going to do one thing and you get in there and you're like, oh, wait, okay, the curve's doing something completely different. And so it's just practice, practice, practice and understanding. But yeah, it was very complex. There was some high complexity. And then there was things we came up on and we thought, man, this is going to be crazy. And it was one of the easiest cuts. And then you get up on something, you go, yeah, this is not going to be too bad. And then 2 hours later, you're going, what happened? So it's really it's a gauging energy, gauging dynamics and gauging movement.
And also to that, the trees were not done moving in the sense of they were still unsettled from the storm. So even some days when we got done working all day and we were supposedly having a easy hike out to the cars or back to the tent sites, we would have to cut some trees down that just happened to fall during our work day on the hike out. Or same thing when we had time off, 3 days of the weekend off, we'd come back and our path back in, it would be like, what do you mean we have to cut down 5 more trees just to get where we were at last week? So a lot of them, it was even just like a simple wind gust would take down just what seemed to be a very sturdy, say, tulip poplar, and a 5 mile per hour wind gust comes through and the whole root ball comes up. So it was still a lot of unexpected tree movement as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, Kacy. Dan has a question in chat. How much work from the storm damage is there left to do? And then if you mind coming off mic for a second, do you mean just across the whole southeast? This is talking about specifically the AT, but just like just to get all the trails open, like from the damage.
Well, I'd start with the AT, but then if you want to elaborate in the whole southeast, that would be great too.
Okay. Cool. Does anyone want to jump in?
Yeah, I can answer that. It's a lot of root balls, a lot of root balls pulling up on on the AT, but all trails, especially in my neck of the woods. I predominantly my crew's working on Cherokee National Forest, and I've walked most of these trails, and so you've got a like sometimes the trail is just completely like washed away because of heavy rains. Root ball has pulled it away. And so there's we've got to address removing the root ball or building the trail up around it and looking at that. There are still trees coming down. I went out last month with our crew and cut 3 trees that were still standing that had come down across the AT. Leaners, a lot of leaners out there that are still waiting for them to do what they need to do, or having to go out with some type of rigging equipment and kind of put them in place and try to remove them safely, that kind of thing. But it is a lot of tread repair, a lot of reestablishing the tread, reestablishing the trail corridor. Because when we came through, the main goal was to punch through, to just get the AT open, get the AT connector trails open. And so that's what we did. And so now it's like going back and addressing the rest of the stuff and doing that work. And that's going to be a couple of years. It's going to take a while. Just in the Southeast, the regions that were hit, it's going to take a few years, 5 years probably, to be able to get these trails back up to all of them back up to where they're supposed to be. But the challenge is like, when's the next storm going to happen? We had Fred a few years ago. Then, we had a couple others. Then we had Helene. And it's like, what's going to happen next? What's the next storm? Where's it going to hit? And I think that we don't know that, and that by building out these programs, building out these skill sets and a wide variety of folks to be able to pull us together to go do that work, and be able to clear those trails as needed. But yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Thanks, Scotty. I have another question in chat from Isabel. Hi, Isabel. Um, Isabel wrote, would love to hear your thoughts on the 3-year chainsaw exemption in the Frank Church Wilderness. Also, how can regions who may not be lucky to have such a wealth of local crosscut knowledge explore traditional tool options for trail clearing?
I could kick this one off. I would at least start by saying, I don't have all of the details about that chainsaw exemption, and of course, work in a pretty different region and landscape. But I think, saws and other partner organizations can be a solution to a chainsaw exemption, and I hope this session would be a clear example of that. One experience that we did have that maybe is somewhat relatable to that exemption is, I believe that's heavily driven by outfitters and guides, right? And folks are not wanting to have their businesses and livelihood impacted by a rule or a barrier that maybe they don't understand or don't really know how to fix themselves, right? And so I think we experienced some of that here, where there was, the trail we're talking about working on is the Appalachian Trail. It is a very high use trail. And there are people in these small pockets of the Southeast that have built their entire business on expecting that bubble to come in at maximum capacity, right? And whether you're a hostel owner or a restaurant owner or selling outdoor gear. So we have a lot of those types of businesses that really depend on the trail being open. And so when this chainsaw exemption, we're started to get really loud and get a lot of attention, there were some business owners, in Tennessee that were joining them very, very much so. They don't know how to use a crosscut saw. They're not certified in it, and they're upset about that barrier, and they want the trail opened as quickly as possible. And so in their mind, that means there needs to be a chainsaw exemption so that I can continue to, thrive with this business I've set up. And I hear that. And so one success story out of that is now we are just so close with some of those business owners, including some who were highly supportive of a chainsaw exemption, because now they're aware of saws, and now there's a couple individuals who I think they could call us personally and say like, hey, there's some work here in wilderness, and and we need to clear some of those trails. And so building some of those partnerships, working together, I think are just such powerful solutions to some of our wilderness problems. Like leaning on some of those friend groups or other partner groups who have been doing wilderness stewardship work for decades is part of the solution, and bringing them to the table. And that means giving them resources, and giving them the opportunities to go and help out with some of those, complex wilderness management issues and decisions that are being made out there. Like in our situation, where some of the decision makers were not folks who were had wilderness backgrounds or had crosscut saw trainings, right? And so we had that partnership to be able to say, hey, can we work together on this? And so I think that is part of the solution. And again, I don't have all the details about what's going on up there. But I think to answer the second part of your question, there are several different wilderness skills institutes that are going on, and I believe there is one up there, the Rocky Mountains Wilderness Skills Institute, where folks can plug in and get that certification, or learn how to use a crosscut saw or more traditional tools, so that they can be part of the solution and that wilderness management and wilderness stewardship. There's a variety of partners out there who will train you and put you out for, so you can go out and volunteer for a week. It's almost like a vacation, and giving back to your community, and help service some of the wilderness trails out there. So there are many partner organizations who can, not only plug you into Wilderness Skills Institute, but also, go on a little adventure and do the trail work as well. So some good opportunities that way.
Thank you so much to Kacy, Kaitlin, Scotty for hopping in this.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Kristy.
Have a good one, everyone.